The largest concentration camp of the Third Reich, operated by Nazi Germany, was Auschwitz. Inside the barbed wire fences, at least 1.1 million people were killed in the gas chambers and by violence inflicted upon the prisoners by the guards. The commandant, Rudolf Höss, was later executed inside the camp on a specially built gallows. At Auschwitz, for the reign of terror and hell he instilled, Rudolf Höss faced execution on a specially built gallows. Guards were trained to violently strike fear into the hearts of prisoners, and infamous staff members like Irma Grez and Joseph Kramer regularly took prisoners' lives. It wasn't just a place of mass killing, it was also a place of torture, and one block became incredibly feared. Block 11, located inside Auschwitz I. Block 11, a brick building within Auschwitz Worst, was where horrific punishment occurred. But what is the story of this? Join us today as we look at the horrific torture of Block 11 at Auschwitz. Remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Initially an army barracks, Auschwitz later transitioned into the largest and deadliest concentration camp in the Third Reich. Approximately 1.3 million prisoners were housed there, and the gas chambers were used daily to kill prisoners on a massive scale. Death, starvation, and suffering filled every corner of the camp. Prisoners were forced to work strenuously and given very little food, leading to widespread malnutrition. Those transported to Auschwitz had to undergo selection, where guards and doctors chose which prisoners could work. Those deemed unfit, too old, or too young were taken straight to the gas chambers. To maintain law and order in the camp, guards were instructed to be violent, and some became murderers, whipping and beating prisoners to death in front of others. Women like Irma Grez and Johanna Bormann used their dogs to terrorize prisoners, even killing and maiming inmates. Inadequate workers were shot by guards to enforce productivity, and minor rule infractions led to beatings and deaths. The roll call yards had large gallows where almost daily executions took place. Those who broke the rules or attempted to escape were brought out in front of thousands of prisoners and executed as a warning to others. Some guards earned sadistic nicknames for their cruelty. For example, the hyena of Auschwitz, or the woman with the dogs. With this, great fear pervaded the prison population, and one block in particular became notorious for its brutality and punishment. Prisoners often faced punishment for breaking rules, such as returning for second helpings of food at mealtimes, bartering with their own gold teeth to buy bread, stealing food from kitchens, or even resorting to desperate measures like stealing from the pigsty. Floggings were carried out in public at roll call, becoming large whipping spectacles designed to terrorize prisoners. One particularly cruel device was the flogging table, also known as the goat. It forced prisoners into a locked position, their feet in a box while stretched over a table. Guards then whipped them and forced them to count the lashes. Prisoners were made to shout, 25 besten Dank haben Eis erhalten, meaning 25 received with many thanks. If they got the number wrong, the flogging started again from number 1. Another form of punishment involved tying prisoners to posts with their hands tied behind their backs, using chains and hooks. They were left dangling by their wrists in medieval-style manacles. However, Block 11 was infamous for being the brutal punishment block where torture was administered. Block 11, a brick building found inside Auschwitz First, the main camp of the complex, was a place of execution and torture. Between Block 10 and 11 stood the Auschwitz death wall, where many prisoners faced firing squads. Inside Block 11, various torture chambers and punishment blocks were used to extract information and inflict pain and suffering onto the prisoners. Prisoners endured extreme torture during interrogations inside Block 11, where various devices and methods were used to extract information. One such device was the Boger Swing, invented by guard Wilhelm Boger. It was a meter-long iron bar suspended by chains hung from the ceiling. Prisoners would be brought in for questioning, stripped naked and bent over the bar, with wrists manacled to ankles. Boger would then ask questions, starting quietly, gradually increasing volume, and finally bellowing. At each return, another guard armed with a crowbar would smash the victim across the buttocks. As the swinging continued, the wailing victim would faint, be revived, and faint again, enduring relentless blows until only a mass of bleeding pulp remained. Many perished from this ordeal, some sooner, some later. In the end, a sack of bones and flayed flesh and fat was swept along the shambles of that concrete floor to be dragged away. Boger himself was known for overseeing terrible crimes inside Block 11, but he was never executed for his role in the camp's punishments. Inside Block 11, the first attempts and experiments to kill and exterminate people using Zyklon B were made in September 1941. As the final solution ramped up, the guards tried different ways of killing prisoners, and Zyklon B became the method used in the gas chambers to kill hundreds of thousands. These experiments were conducted inside the block, where Commandant Rudolf Höss personally witnessed the first killing of Russian prisoners of war in the basement of Block 11. More Russian POWs were subjected to these experiments, but Block 11 itself became unsuitable due to poor ventilation and the distant crematorium for disposing of bodies. Consequently, gas chambers with adjacent crematoria were developed, using Block 11 as the prototype gas chamber. Many prisoners in Block 11 were suspected of defiance or resistance at the camp. As a result, they were interrogated and tortured in various ways, including beatings and being thrown into the specialized torture cells of Block 11. The stay bunker, or standing cells, were oubliette-style dungeons in Block 11's basement, measuring around 1 square yard. 4 prisoners were crammed into each cell, forced to stand cramped in one position for up to 10 days. Some prisoners were allowed to go out to work before being locked back in the standing cells. However, there was minimal air supply, with only a 2-inch opening for air to come in. This ensured the prisoners wouldn't suffocate, though air was in short supply. One survivor of the cells spoke at the Auschwitz trials, recalling how he endured 6 weeks in the standing cells of Block 11, surviving on just 3 small meals. He noted that one prisoner was so hungry inside the cells that he even ate his own shoes. Rudolf Höss claimed the standing cells were used for 3-night punishments, but this was not the case. It was his successor, Arthur Lieberhenschel, who removed the standing cells of Block 11 in 1943. The prisoners who were housed in Block 11 were usually interrogated and then sentenced to death, to be hanged or shot. In the first years of the camp, many prisoners assigned to the harshest labor were imprisoned here, and numerous Polish priests were also housed inside the block. To begin with, the Sonderkommando, groups of prisoners forced to burn bodies, were housed in the block. However, later on, police prisoners suspected of resistance work were held here. Many prisoners met their demise inside Block 11 due to starvation. Some were sentenced to death by starvation, left in a cell to simply starve. But one of the most brutal parts of Block 11 was what lay outside in a courtyard, between Block 11 and Block 10. Here stood the Death Wall, a concrete reinforced wall where firing squads executed numerous prisoners. The condemned were taken from their cells in Block 11 to the Death Wall, where they were lined up and shot by an SS firing squad. Thousands of Polish prisoners and those suspected of resistance activity lost their lives against this wall. Additionally, death sentences were carried out on the Death Wall for people brought into the camp to be killed. Many hostages detained in reprisal for Polish resistance activities in nearby towns and cities were also executed next to Block 11. The Death Wall was dismantled in 1944, but today a reconstruction stands. Prisoners were also flogged and tied to posts in the yard next to Block 11. So Block 11 was the feared torture and punishment block of the deadliest concentration camp of the Second World War. It was greatly feared and served as the Gestapo headquarters for inflicting interrogation and brutality onto the prisoners. With devices such as the Boger Swing and the standing cells, it became a place where no one wanted to be. Because of this, it was considered the death block of Auschwitz. However, it was just one part of the horrific concentration camp system, and represented only a fraction of the horror and terror that prisoners had to endure on a daily basis. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe.